The villagers of Klingenberg, Germany, would later say that the story began long before anyone realized something was wrong. Before the screaming, before the priests, before the world argued over whether Anneliese Michel was a case of possession or a catastrophic failure of medicine. In September 1968, when she was just 16, Anneliese collapsed at school. Her body stiffened, her arms locked, and she could feel a crushing pressure on her chest. She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, only stare into the void while her classmates screamed for help. Doctors diagnosed it as epilepsy, temporal lobe seizures, a disorder that can affect memory, emotions, and even perception of reality. They assured her frightened parents that modern medicine could manage everything. But the medication didn't help. Anneliese began waking in the night, convinced something was pinning her down. Not a medical sensation, something with intent. She told her mother, "I hear footsteps, but no one is there." At first, the family let it go. Stress. Side effects from medication. Nerves. But as months passed, the episodes grew worse. Anneliese described seeing shadow figures, hearing voices whisper her name, and something else, something that terrified her more than the seizures. She began waking with bruises on her arms, scratches on her legs, and claw marks on her back. Doctors adjusted her medication. The voices grew louder. Rumors started spreading through their small town. Anneliese had begun avoiding sacred spaces, covering her ears when she heard church bells. She tried to pray, but the moment she knelt, she would freeze, her body shaking violently, her face contorting into something unrecognizable. She told the priest, "It hates the prayers. It won't let me pray." By 1973, Anneliese was convinced she was being tormented by something that wasn't part of this world. Doctors insisted it was neurological. Priests suspected something darker. And Anneliese? She was trapped between both worlds, begging someone to tell her which was real. By 1974, Anneliese Michel's condition spiraled beyond anything her parents or doctors could explain. The seizures continued, but something new emerged, a hatred toward religious objects that seemed to come from somewhere else entirely. Anneliese had been raised devout Catholic, someone who prayed voluntarily and attended Mass without being pushed. But suddenly, she refused to walk past the church. When her mother placed a small crucifix by her bed, Anneliese threw it across the room with such force it dented the wall. She claimed it burned her skin even though she never touched it. Her parents brought her to more doctors. Doctors increased the dosage. The voices increased with it. At night, she screamed so loudly neighbors heard her through brick walls. She clawed at the mattress until her fingernails split. She slammed her head into the floor, repeatedly, until bruises decorated her forehead like a permanent crown. She told her parents, "These are not thoughts. These are voices. They talk over my prayers." Her mother Anna later recalled that Anneliese didn't speak with one tone anymore. She spoke in several, each one deeper and more guttural than any voice her daughter could produce. The worst part? Sometimes they all spoke at once. One day during Mass, while kneeling, Anneliese suddenly froze. Her breathing quickened. Her eyes widened. And then she began snarling, an animal sound that didn't resemble anything human. She couldn't cross the threshold into the church. Her body physically stopped, shaking violently, as if an invisible force was holding her back. Parishioners stared. A priest approached her afterward and quietly suggested more prayer. Anneliese replied with a voice that wasn't her own. "Prayer doesn't help. He won't let me. She said. Not it. Her once bright personality was gone. She no longer laughed, no longer wrote in her journals. She stopped eating meals with her family and locked herself in her room for hours, whispering conversations to the empty air. Doctors insisted the hallucinations were side effects of epilepsy. But Anneliese's family started to believe something else. This wasn't a medical condition. Something wanted to take her. When the hallucinations grew darker, the Michel family turned to the church. But the church does not grant exorcisms easily, not without proof. The first priest to evaluate Anneliese was Father Ernst Alt. He met her in September 1975, expecting to find a girl suffering from mental illness. Instead, He said he felt a suffocating heaviness the moment he stepped inside the house. Anneliese sat at the kitchen table, silent. She didn't look up. She didn't blink. But when Father Alt tried to speak, Anneliese's head jerked violently, not toward him, but away, as if something inside her refused to face him. Without raising her eyes, she muttered, "He has no authority here." The voice was low, gravelly, and too deep to belong to a 23-year-old girl weighing less than 100 pounds. Father Alt later wrote in his report, "It did not feel like speaking to a patient. I felt like I was being studied." Anneliese suddenly erupted, snarling, spitting, grabbing the priest's sleeve with terrifying strength. For someone physically weak and exhausted, she overpowered 3 adults trying to restrain her. At church, her reaction was worse. Before crossing the threshold, her body froze again, just like before. Her back arched so violently it looked like her spine would snap. She screamed at the holy water, calling it burning poison, even when it never touched her skin. During one evaluation session, Father Alt pushed a rosary across the table toward her. Anneliese didn't look at it, but she knew exactly where it was. She hissed, "Take it away!" Not shouted. Hissed. At night, her behavior escalated into the grotesque. She crawled under the table like an animal, ate spiders and coal, drank her own urine, growled for hours without losing her voice. Doctors were out of explanations. But something else convinced Father Alt that this wasn't a psychiatric disorder. Anneliese began speaking languages she never studied, ancient ones. Latin, Greek, even Aramaic, a language priests learn only through seminary. And she spoke them with fluency. Father Alt wrote his superior, "This is not epilepsy. This is not psychosis. This is possession." He officially requested an exorcism. The church finally agreed. And what happened during those sessions would become one of the most disturbing exorcism cases ever recorded. The first official exorcism session began on September 24, 1975, inside the Michel family home. A mattress was laid on the floor. The priests, Father Arnold Renz and Father Ernst Alt, brought a crucifix, holy water, and a tape recorder. They were instructed to document everything. The moment the prayers began, Anneliese reacted. Her body stiffened, then violently contorted. She growled, deep, guttural, nothing like her own voice. Then, as Father Renz continued the ritual, a voice erupted from her throat. "We hate it here," the priests demanded. "Who are you?" What answered was not one voice. It was multiple voices, layered, overlapping, speaking in German and Latin. One voice said it was Lucifer. Another identified itself as Cain. Then Judas. Next, Nero. And then, a name that disturbed everyone present. "I am Hitler." Her voice changed again, mocking, spiteful, and laughed. The priests understood. Whatever was speaking was using names tied to evil, betrayal, violence, or genocide, not because these souls were present, but because these were names that carried the highest emotional weight. The Church teaches that demons lie, choosing names that terrify. Anneliese's voice kept shifting, each personality interrupting and talking over the other, arguing, snarling, fighting for dominance inside her body. At one point she screamed, "She belongs to us." Not shouted. It sounded as if multiple throats were speaking through hers. Her body bent backward at an impossible angle. 4 men struggled to hold her down. Another night, a crucifix placed on her chest caused blister-like welts to rise beneath the skin as if she were burning from the inside. She stopped eating. Stopped sleeping. Her weight dropped rapidly. Her mother wrote later, "I stopped seeing my daughter. Something else was looking back at me." And yet, Anneliese insisted the exorcisms continue. She believed she had to endure this suffering for a reason. "I must suffer. For others." Her voice was barely human when she said it. The exorcisms continued several times a week. By October, Anneliese's condition escalated into something beyond what her family, or even the priests, expected. During one session, Father Renz pressed the crucifix to Anneliese's forehead. She didn't scream. She laughed. A deep, ragged laugh that scraped the air. Then something new happened. The voices began arguing with each other. The tape recorder captured it. Silence. No, she is ours. You have no right. Different tones. Different accents. One voice was sneering and arrogant. Another was furious, growling like an animal. Another sounded old, exhausted, bitter. It was as if multiple entities were trapped inside her, fighting for control. The priest demanded, "In the name of Christ, tell us your purpose." The voices layered together. To drag her down. Anneliese suddenly lunged upward. Even though ropes tied her wrists and ankles to the bed frame, the force was so strong that one strap snapped. Her parents and 2 priests held her down, and still, she lifted them off the ground. Father Alt later wrote in a diary, "No human girl of her size could have had that strength." Between sessions, Anneliese wandered the house like a restless prisoner. Her skin grew pale. Her cheekbones sharpened. She ripped apart her rosaries. She ate spiders. She even bit into a dead bird she found in the yard. Her mother tried to stop her, but Anneliese growled, "Let me suffer. I must suffer for others." She stopped speaking as herself. Only the voices spoke. Her family was forbidden by the priest to seek psychiatric hospitalization again. The church believed medical intervention could interfere with spiritual purification. One night, during a session, Anneliese's body went rigid. Her eyes rolled upward, only the whites visible. Then she whispered, "This is not over," and collapsed. The room went silent except for the sound of the tape recorder spinning. Father Renz wrote later, "For the first time, I wondered if we were losing her." By winter of 1975, the exorcisms had been going on for months. The toll on Anneliese was unmistakable. Her once bright eyes were now dark and sunken. Her weight dropped below 80 pounds, 36 kilograms. Her knees were swollen and bruised from performing hundreds of forced genuflections, dropping to her knees and standing again, over and over. Sometimes she collapsed from exhaustion. Other times, she kept going until her knees fractured. Her parents begged her to stop. She refused. "I must suffer. It is my mission." The priest considered stopping the sessions, but Anneliese begged them not to. Between exorcisms, she became even more unstable. She smashed fruit on the floor with her bare hands and snarled like an animal. She stood in the cold winter yard for hours, barefoot, praying aloud. At night, she banged her head against the wall so violently that her bedroom door was later found covered in dents and blood. Father Alt documented in his notes. She said she could not enter the church. She said the ground burned her feet. During one exorcism session, the priest sprinkled holy water. Anneliese hissed, then levitated. 3 witnesses later testified that her entire body lifted off the ground for several seconds. She wasn't conscious. Her head fell back, her arms dropped, her body hovering, as if something else was holding her up. When she came back to herself, she wept, exhausted, barely able to speak. "Why won't they leave me alone?" She stopped eating regular food. She said, "The demons won't let me." Her parents brought soup and bread, but she refused. "I'm not allowed." Her voice wasn't pleading. It was resigned. The priests recorded more tapes. The voices on those recordings were not confused. They were intelligent, mocking, coordinated. "She will not escape. She is chosen. She belongs to us," her mother later said. "I didn't recognize my child anymore." The family was trapped between faith and fear. The priests believed stopping the exorcism might doom her soul. The doctors believed continuing it was killing her. And Anneliese herself believed this suffering was what God required. She told her sister, "Everyone will know what I did. Not for me. For the world." By early 1976, Anneliese's condition was no longer just physical or mental. It had become spiritual obsession. She stopped attending university. She withdrew completely from her friends. She wrote pages and pages in her diary, almost all of it about punishment and sacrifice. One entry read, I am nothing. I am worthless. I must atone. Another said. I will suffer for the youth of the world. I will suffer so they will not go to hell. Her mother recalled that Anneliese would sit motionless for hours, staring at a crucifix. Sometimes she prayed aloud until her lips cracked and bled. Sometimes she whispered in Latin, even though she'd never studied the language. The priest believed she was receiving visions. She believed she was chosen. But the visions came with unbearable terror. She claimed she saw demons' faces on the walls. Faces that twisted and smiled at her. She said they mocked her. You are worthless. You cannot win. Her sleep was increasingly disrupted. Her body trembled uncontrollably during prayers. She stopped eating almost entirely. Her bones became visible beneath her skin. Her once full cheeks were now hollow. Her collarbones protruded sharply. Yet she refused hospitalization. Every time her parents tried to take her to a doctor, she screamed, No. I don't want to go back. Doctors will stop God's work. Father Alt wrote in his notes. She was convinced her body was no longer hers. During one session, the priest asked, Why are you still here? The voice answered, She doesn't want us gone. That shook them. Because it wasn't true. Or was it? One night, Anneliese quietly told her boyfriend, I am ready. And I know what will happen. He begged her to stop the exorcisms, to go to a hospital. She smiled weakly and whispered, I can't. I have to finish this. Her family prayed harder. The priest scheduled more sessions. But everyone sensed the same thing. The end was coming. And nobody knew whether that ending would be salvation or tragedy. By the spring of 1976, the exorcisms intensified. The schedule became relentless. One session every 2 days, sometimes lasting 4 hours or more. Anneliese could barely walk. Her knees were permanently damaged from the forced genuflections. Her once healthy body was now frail and skeletal, her cheeks sunken, her eyes dark with exhaustion. She weighed less than 70 pounds. But she insisted the priests continue. I don't want to die. But I can't stop. During one session, Father Alt recorded. She spoke with several voices at once. The room became freezing cold. She growled, hissed, spoke languages she had never learned. Latin, Aramaic, and an ancient German dialect. At times, she barked like a dog. One voice mocked the priests. She is weak. She is ours. Yet another voice, calmer, exhausted, broke through. Let me go. And for just a second. It sounded like Anneliese. Her parents thought about stopping everything. But when they gently suggested it, Anneliese's reaction was explosive. She screamed at them. She clawed her own face. She tore at her clothes and slammed her head against the wall. No! If you stop this, I will be damned! Her desperation terrified them. The priests believed that stopping now would mean spiritual defeat. Her parents believed that stopping would mean abandoning her. Anneliese believed that stopping would doom souls. So the sessions continued. By May, she was barely conscious between exorcisms. She slept on the floor wrapped in a thin blanket. She refused food, claiming, The demons won't let me eat. She barely drank water. Her mother tried to spoon-feed her mashed potatoes. But Anneliese turned away, crying, I want to, but I can't. Father Renz described one moment that shattered him. They placed a crucifix in her hands. She screamed in agony and recoiled, as if it burned her. Then her voice lowered. I am too far gone. At the end of one exorcism, she whispered something quiet. Something disturbingly peaceful. Mother, I'm free. But she wasn't. The next session, the voices returned. Stronger. More venomous. The priests prayed harder. Her parents cried harder. Anneliese could barely speak. Yet she managed one final sentence that would haunt everyone who heard it. I know this is necessary. Her suffering was reaching its breaking point. And it would soon take a final, irreversible turn. June 30th, 1976. The night that everything came to an end. Anneliese was now too weak to stand without help. Her bones were visibly protruding beneath her skin. Her voice was barely more than a whisper. Yet she insisted on attending one final exorcism. Her parents guided her into the living room where the mattress had been placed. She knelt slowly, painfully. Every breath sounded like it cost her everything she had left. Father Renz opened the Bible. Father Alt prepared the holy water. The tape recorder clicked on. At first, the session was quiet. Anneliese hardly reacted when the prayers began. Something that had never happened before. She did not scream. She did not twist. She did not growl. She simply stared upward, eyes glossy, tears forming but never falling. After several minutes, she murmured, "Please continue." The priest continued. For the first time in months, no voices interrupted. No mocking laughter. No cursing. No arguing between entities. Just silence. Deep, heavy silence. At one point, her breathing became rapid, like she was struggling to stay inside her body. Her mother sobbed softly. Then Anneliese's head turned toward her parents. Her expression softened. Her voice, her true voice, emerged. "Mama, I'm afraid." Her mother ran to her side, holding her frail hand against her face. "We're here, sweetheart. You're not alone." Anneliese closed her eyes. The priest continued with the ritual, but the moment felt different. There was no resistance. No battle. Only surrender. Then, with a sudden clarity she had not shown for months, Anneliese looked at the crucifix on the wall and whispered, "Pray for me." Her parents helped her into bed afterward. Her limbs were cold. Her breathing shallow. Before her mother left the room, Anneliese spoke one final sentence. The last word she ever said. "Mother, I'm free." That night, she slipped into unconsciousness. Her body could no longer endure the starvation, the exhaustion, the physical trauma of months of exorcisms. July 1st, 1976, morning. Her mother entered her room. Anneliese was lying on her side, still, peaceful. Her hands folded. Her lips relaxed. Her heart had stopped. She was only 23 years old. The priest arrived minutes later and called the doctor. The doctor refused to sign the death certificate. If she had been under medical care, she would be alive. The police were notified, and the case shifted from a spiritual battleground to a criminal investigation. Anneliese Michel was buried on July 7, 1976. Her grave became a place of mourning and anger. Authorities launched a full investigation. Autopsy results revealed malnutrition, dehydration, broken knees from genuflecting, weight less than 68 pounds. The medical examiner ruled that she died because her body shut down. The state filed charges. On March 30, 1978, a trial began in a packed courtroom. 2 priests, her mother and father, all charged with negligent homicide. The prosecution argued that Anneliese was mentally ill, and the exorcisms replaced medical treatment. They played the audio tapes, not to prove possession, but to show how deeply her mind had fractured. The courtroom heard her screaming, growling, and the layered voices. "Let her rot. She belongs to us. I am the evil." People in the courtroom wept. Even jurors looked away. The defense argued something different. That Anneliese refused medical help, believed she had a mission to suffer, and that the priest honored her wishes. Father Alt testified with trembling hands. "We thought we were helping her. We believed her soul was at risk." Anneliese's mother said, "She begged us. We did what she asked." But the prosecution didn't back down. They repeated, "No food. No doctor. No intervention." After weeks of testimony, the verdict came. Guilty. Her parents and the priests received 6 months prison, suspended, 3 years probation. They walked out of the courtroom free. Public opinion was split. To some, Anneliese was a victim of religion. To others, she was a martyr who fought evil. In 2013, Her grave was opened and examined again. A priest visited and said, "Her suffering was real." The question remains, from where? Today, people still visit her grave. Some pray. Some leave flowers. Some just stand in silence, listening to the wind. Because whether you believe she was a victim of mental illness, a casualty of religious extremism, or a soul tormented by something beyond our understanding, one fact remains. Anneliese Michel believed her suffering had purpose. Her final diary entry read, "I am ready, because I know what I must do." And her last words to her mother were, "Mother, I'm free."